Yrjö Sirola as a fighter, teacher and person. 1876 to 18th of March 1936. By Elli Stenberg. Keep your eyes wide open is a life motto which Yrjö Sirola followed closely in all periods and activities of his life and gave as an instruction to the entire Finnish working class in 1906. This motto is known by everyone who was fortunate to know Yrjö Sirola as a teacher or close colleague. A history of Yrjö Sirola's life in all its stages is inseparably tied to the history of the Finnish working class. Also during the times when he has been abroad, 1909 to 1913 in America and after 1918 in the Soviet Union, he has worked in particular on behalf of the Finnish working class and the whole Finnish nation. It is natural and easy for the son of a worker to step into the workers' movement and devote his whole life to it. On the other hand, among those coming from the intelligentsia, there are only few who can honestly feel and say, I have no interest beside the interest of the working class. Yrjö Sirola, almost unnaturally modest, selfless and honest fighter in class struggle, earnestly felt that way despite coming from the intelligentsia, being the son of a priest. Yrjö Sirola joined the workers' movement on the eve of the 1905 general strike, when the Finnish working class was taking its first independent steps. Before that, he had already read socialist literature and been to workers' meetings, which he felt passionate sympathy towards. In 1905, he became the editor of the People's Paper in Tampere. He described his worldview of those times, saying that, quote, it was a jumble of progressive secular bourgeois, Henry Georgist, Tolstoyist, theosophical and utopian socialist waverings, unquote. During the 1905 general strike, Yrjö Sirola was already a notable leader of the workers' movement. With his inspiring speeches, which the older generation still thinks about today, he rallied the working masses behind him. His influence was the greatest during the two revolutionary periods of 1905 to 1906 and 1917 to 1918. He always gave a great importance for the international experience of the proletariat, and through them tried to give a direction and purpose for the significant events in the Finnish workers' movement. The experiences of the Russian Revolution and the Paris Commune were always topics of his energetic study, and later the experiences of the Finnish working class as well. Skill, sense of responsibility and hard work caused Sirola to quickly rise to the most important positions in the workers' movement. He was elected party secretary in the 1906 Party Congress in Oulu and to the parliament as a Workers' Party representative in 1907. Documents of the parliament testify to his tenacity. Resolutely, he was, for example, in the front lines of the struggle against Tsarism, upholding the Marxist view in the question of national struggle for independence. In fighting against the Tsarist oppression of Finland, he never mistook the Russian people to be the oppressors. On the contrary, he understood that the oppression was targeting them too. He felt the lives of the two nations were closely tied to each other and wanted to collaborate in the joint struggle for emancipation. Privately, he was in contact with Russian revolutionaries and took part, among others, in the conference of the Russian Bolsheviks in Tampere in 1905 and in Stockholm in 1906. In these events, he was introduced to Lenin, which was mutually very significant. Since that time, Sirola took many influences from Lenin. On the eve of the Finnish Revolution, in the autumn of 1917, Sirola was already one of the most principled and unshaking leaders of the workers' movement. At that time, too, he was a member of the parliament and Social Democrat Party leadership. He saw the requirements of the situation more clearly than many others and boldly defended his views against those who still doubted the necessity of revolution. During the revolution, he was the Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Finnish People's Delegation, in parentheses, the Red Government, to which job he was suited due to his knowledge of foreign languages. In this position, like in all others, he never lost firm contact with the masses, but spoke to the people often and had conversations with them. After the defeat of the revolution, Yrjö Sirola took part in the serious self-criticism by the working class leaders who led the revolution, concerning the reasons for its defeat and their old forms of activity. Together with Kuusinen and others of the working class's finest, he began the arduous work for organizing a communist party in Finland. He was the chairman of the Finnish Communist Party Central Committee and was tirelessly and eagerly at the front lines of all the party's battles. Sirola also took part in the founding Congress and other congresses of the Comintern, and was a member in the Comintern's Control Committee. In the Soviet Union he contributed significantly to the field of education. He worked as the People's Commissar for Education in Soviet Karelia, and as the headmaster of the Communist University of the National Minorities of the West in Leningrad Oblast. But Yrjö Sirola didn't live solely for the working class, he also lived for his nation. In his writings and speeches he often emphasizes the joint action of the class-conscious proletarians, freedom-loving peasantry and radical bourgeois. Already after the general strike he saw the necessity of this joint action and set it as the task for working-class struggle. Yrjö Sirola wasn't only a politician and class fighter, he was also a writer. His newspaper articles were often prosaic and immersive, still always retaining the appropriate factuality and not lapsing into mere pretty-sounding words. In his youth he also wrote poetry and prose about contemporary events for periodicals. It is unlikely that he put together a unified collection, with the exception of Vapautuksen tiellä, On the Path of Liberation, which contains newspaper writings. Through his translations into Finnish, he has made some of the best work of proletarian poetry known to the Finnish working class. He performed significant work as a literary critic, doing similar analysis of, for example, Järnefelt, as Lenin did on Tolstoy. He has made the Kalevala, in parentheses, Finnish and Karelian national epic, more well known in Soviet Karelia through his writings and presentations. There he supported in every possible way artistic literature in Finnish and Karelian languages, and devoted a lot of time and energy to it. His personal knowledge of literature was amazingly broad. Yrjö Sirola has had a great and influential career in teaching. All his work was dear to him, but it sometimes seemed that teaching was the dearest. He admitted it himself, albeit saying that it was difficult to say what was closest to his heart. Already in his youth, while researching the events of the Paris Commune, his attention was drawn to a statement by one of the members of the Commune. Quote, "Let us learn, let us gain education. It is due to our ignorance that we were defeated." Unquote. He never forgot those words. He acquired knowledge for himself, distributed it generously to others, and guided the youth in their independent search for knowledge, here too maintaining close connection with everyday life. He considered organizing information to be as important as gathering it. It is not enough to know, one must also use. It is not enough to want, one must also do. Sirola often reminded his students of these words of Goethe, himself being a prime example. Self-education and self-discipline were characteristic for him. He tried to cultivate these things in his students too, because, quote, "Without them, man really cannot do much that is particularly important in life." Unquote. There are not many teachers like Sirola. Even the most difficult things became easy to understand through him. He knew how to motivate in study. He was full of warmth towards his students. Anyone could ask him for advice without delay, and give writings or presentations for him to examine. He was never so busy that he couldn't advise, evaluate, and correct errors. He knew how to give even the hardest criticism without depressing the student, but instead inspiring them to try again. He was not only a teacher to his students, but also a comrade and fatherly friend. As a teacher, Sirola became an invaluable asset in raising working-class forces. Marxist philosophy of society, dialectical materialism, taught by him, has given many workers who actively work in the workers' movement a Marxist-Leninist clarity of thinking. Yrjö Sirola also carried out constant scientific research in the area of working-class history. He founded the Workers' Archive in Helsinki. Under his leadership, an archive of the Finnish Workers' Revolution was organized in Leningrad. He strove towards new achievements in all fields of human knowledge. In his work and his aims, he was forever young and tireless. The inheritance left by Yrjö Sirola is large and valuable. It is immortal. To maintain this inheritance and Comrade Sirola's memory, the writers of Soviet Karelia have begun a project for gathering and researching the writings left by Sirola. In the same purpose, the Yrjö Sirola Foundation has recently been created in Helsinki, the mission of which is to aid in many ways the education, scientific, artistic, and other endeavors of the democratic forces of our country. There are great people who only live after their death. Yrjö Sirola lived and influenced much during his life, though due to circumstances of state politics, he didn't become as recognized as he deserved even in his homeland. Now both living and the dead step into view from underground and from the other side of the border. Yrjö Sirola is in the front ranks. His work lives in those he raised and will survive through generations. He is immortal for, quote, living in the best of the future is a type of immortality, unquote.